Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Second Wind by the Lost Samurai. Luffy and Zoro awaken in two different parts of East Blue, both with the same thing on their mind. Protect the crew. There would be no failures this time around. Captain's orders. As bits and pieces of the unknown past that the two comrades share are gradually revealed, the rest of the crew can only speculate. For all their absolute resolve, they're hiding something. Don't own anything? Now wait a second. I would like to give a huge shout out to the first member of our channel, Garrick Russell, the first warlord. Adios.
Hey, what's he doing? Bram asked. Is he really going to wake that thing up?
Beats me, Wiper said. But he says he can help us find the Golden Bell, so let him be for now. I may not like them myself, but they've done a lot for Nolan's descendant, so we'll treat them as allies. Bram nodded in agreement, and Lackey, who had shown up a few minutes ago, supporting a severely injured Kamakiri, smiled in relief. What's this, Wiper? You're acting rather docile all of a sudden, she commented. Wiper shot her a look, but rather than flinch, she continued smiling, causing him to scoff. Even the best of warriors can recognize a ceasefire. I'm satisfied for now, but if the Skypians think they can take our land again, I won't show any mercy, he said. A loud mix between a hiss and a growl alerted them to the fact that Luffy had roused the master of the sky. The Shandians tensed as if preparing for an attack, but the giant reptile merely observed her surroundings before her eyes rested on Luffy expectantly. The rubberman grinned up at her. We kicked God's ass. Now we're gonna ring the bell, so be sure to listen. Straw Hat, Wiper called. It's my goal to ring the bell as well, but first things come first. Are we sure Enel is really defeated? He is, came a voice from behind him. The Shandians turned to see one of their own coming out of hiding. I can hear his voice from here, but just barely. It's strange. Enel's voice has never been this quiet. Wiper narrowed his eyes. And what exactly are you doing here, Isa? The girl gulped in fear. I heard everyone's voices gathered in one place, and I wanted to know what was going on. Well, you're lucky you arrived after the battle ended, Kamakiri stated. You could have been hurt otherwise. I don't need to be told that by you, Kamakrispy, the girl exclaimed, sticking her tongue out. The warrior unexpectedly smiled. Cheeky little brat, he said, with a hint of fondness. So, back to the matter at hand, Wiper said. How do we know that he won't regain consciousness? Wiper asked. If he does, we'll know, Luffy said, but I don't think he will. If anything, Zoro went overboard a bit. He turned to the swordsman. Are you sure he won't bleed out? Zoro nodded, and Luffy accepted the assurance. Out of the two of them, Zoro actually had the greater amount of discipline when it came to holding back. Although Luffy was slightly stronger, it was much easier to mistakenly kill someone with a sword than with bare fists. As a result, after years of honing his swordsmanship, Zoro had an abundance of restraint. Even if he didn't always use it. Hey, Robin, Luffy shouted. Do you think you can figure out where the bell is? Although he rang it in the previous timeline, he honestly didn't remember exactly where it was. Robin thought for a moment. When Jaya ascended past the clouds, it most likely gained some altitude over the White Sea before falling back down. So unless it never made it to the sky, in which case Cricket Sand probably would have found it, it would most likely be at an altitude far above the ruins. She turned to the Skypians. Have you checked the top of Giant Jack? She asked. We never got a chance. Following the island's ascension, our ancestors were weakened from the change in altitude, and were quickly driven off of our land, Wiper said, somewhat bitterly. But God's shrine was built up there afterwards, so if it was up there, that old man would already have found it, he said, pointing to Gonfall, who confirmed it wasn't up there. Are there any cloud formations above the White Sea? Robin asked next. Gonfall rubbed his chin in thought. There are a few rather small ones, but nothing nearly as large as the one we reside on. We should check those as well then, Robin suggested. There's only one problem, Lackey said. How do we get up there? I can check, Luffy offered, before jumping up into the air and with Geppo and ascending past the top of Giant Jack while searching for the cloud formation that he now remembered from the previous timeline. It wasn't long before those gathered at the bottom heard a distant shout of, Gomu Gomu no. Nami's eyes widened. Wait, is he going to? Bell.
A resonating melody echoed through Upper Yard, throughout Skypia, past the clouds, and beyond them. Some who heard it cheered, others cried with relief. A certain snake actually started dancing, much to the bemusement of those who were just now starting to grow accustomed to her presence. After 400 years of war and division, the song of the island had been heard once again.
At that moment, the sun was almost directly over Giant Jack, and a straw-hatted silhouette could be seen from Upper Yard below. Seeing this, Robin smiled, remembering her conversation with her captain from earlier today. Hey Robin, I have a question for you, Luffy said. It was the morning after their bonfire party, and the Straw Hats were now getting ready to set out to find the City of Gold. Yes, Captain San, Robin responded. Remember those gigantic shadows we saw near Jaya, when we first found out about Sky Island? The ones we nearly flipped our shit over? He asked. I remember. Well, I have a theory about those. As Robin listened to his explanation, a smile gradually formed on her face. That's quite the impressive theory, Captain San, but I'd say there's only one to test it out. 10,000 meters below the White Sea, on the island of Jaya, the last descendant of Mont Blanc Noland stared up at the sky wistfully. Message received, Brat. Towering over the island was a kilometer-high silhouette in the fog, wearing a straw hat, back turned, arm raised, and flashing a thumbs up over his head. He really rang it, Bram said. To think the one who would signal the end of the war would be neither Shandian nor Skypian. Such trivial things should matter not, at this point, Gonfall reasoned. Shandians and Skypians alike owe their lives to those pirates. I just hope he heard it, Wiper whispered, causing Lackey to smile again behind him. Hey, it looks like he's coming down, Kamakiri noted. When Luffy landed, he had a satisfied grin on his face. How was that? He asked. Thanks, Straw Hat, Wiper said, uncharacteristically showing gratitude. You helped light the fire of Shandora. We owe you one. No problem, Luffy said, but we have a small problem. Bram looked back up at the cloud that Luffy had descended from. You mean we can't get it down, he inferred. Right, Luffy confirmed. I could probably get it down if I tried, but most likely not without breaking it. But I think I may have a solution. I saw something at the top of the beanstalk that might help us. The group made its way up to the top of Giant Jack, and saw what Luffy was referring to.
Enel had built a ship of some sort using the gold from the ancient city of Shandora. After a few moments of deliberation, Usopp guessed that it was powered by lightning, at which point the Strafuts all turned to Nami. Although her Kleem attack couldn't conjure nearly enough electricity to bring the ship to full power, it was enough to be able to slowly bring it up to the bell, load it on, and lower it to the ground. It was a tedious process with Nami constantly having to recharge it, but they got it done nonetheless.
When they were done, Luffy looked up at the ship and thought. So this is what Enel did with all the gold, he speculated. He then turned to Zoro. Hey, do you think you can cut it up into pieces? He asked. The question caught Nami's interest, and she turned to the swordsman as well. It won't be too hard, Zoro replied, causing Nami to shout in glee. But will we be able to fit it all on the ship? This brought Nami back down to earth. Not all of it, but still, it'll be a lot. I estimate the amount we'll be able to take will be worth around 1.2 billion belly. Her eyes turned to belly symbols as Usopp's sweat dropped. How do you know that? He asked, just by looking. Usopp, are you doubting my money sense? You the sniper asked in response. It's a gift. I was born with it. Wow, I wonder if it's a type of hockey, Luffy said, causing Zoro to laugh. The swordsman then turned to Wiper. Hey, do you mind if we take some of this? He asked. It's worth a lot where we come from. The gold means nothing in that form, Wiper said, shrugging indifferently. You can take as much as you want, as long as it's not from the bell. We are so sailing in style from now on, Nami exclaimed. Usopp looked down at his feet. I just wish we could use it to repair the Mary, but... The reminder of their dilemma brought Nami out of her reverie, and she too looked disconcerted at the thought of having to buy a new ship. After a moment of silence, Luffy spoke up. Guys, I think we have another problem, he said, staring off at the horizon. Catching on to this, Sanji's eyes narrowed. Does it have to do with Enel? He asked. Luffy nodded. I can't sense his aura anymore. Zoro's eyes widened, before he focused his senses in the same direction. After a moment, he started to look slightly uncomfortable. I know I said I went overboard, but not that much. I don't think it was you, said Luffy, frowning. Wiper looked at them strangely, before turning to Isa, who looked scared. They're right. His voice disappeared, she confirmed quietly. Gonfal's eyes widened as well. So Enel is, he trailed off. I'm going to go see what happened, Luffy decided, before shooting off into the atmosphere and heading in the direction of Angel Island. When he arrived at the shore, he began looking around, trying to locate Enel. In retrospect, they should have known better than to just leave him here, surrounded by the people he'd oppressed all these years. But the false deity was still a logia. He didn't think he'd have anything to worry about. Finally, he spotted a figure lying sideways on the island cloud. Making a quick dash up to it, he grimaced. The injury from Zoro's attack was still there, but it wasn't bleeding, and it wasn't the problem. The problem was the knife wound to the heart. Sighing, Luffy walked up to Enel's body. He had to be sure. There was no pulse. The corpse was cold to the touch. Closing his eyes, he straightened up. For a short moment, the only sound to be heard was the howling of the wind through the sky-high tropical paradise. Finally, Luffy spoke. Did you do this? He asked without turning around. Yes, a voice from behind him replied. It was a voice he recognized. Turning around, he laid eyes upon a short elderly woman who met his gaze dead on. In her hand was a sea stone knife, covered in dried blood. It was Amazon, the gatekeeper to Skypia, and to have known so quickly that Enel was vulnerable, and to have been able to locate him. "You're a mantra user?" he asked, despite already knowing the answer. The woman nodded. Luffy was silent for a moment. "Why?" he asked finally. He didn't care for Enel. He wasn't about to preach to anyone about how every life was sacred. He wasn't that pure, he was simply curious. Until 6 years ago, there was a sky island nearby this one. It was a land called Burka. Burka was home to some of the most accomplished mantra users in the sky. Among them were Enel and a group of 4 that would one day become his priests. 6 years ago, Enel laid waste to that land using the Guro Guro no Mi. It was complete annihilation, and to this day, there are no survivors. She had an intent gleam in her eye. At least, no more than one. A simple old woman who survived the genocide. One who had a home, and a family. A daughter, a son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. Amazon turned around, dropping the knife in the process, and began to walk away. Luffy turned around, hoisted Enel's body over his shoulder, and waded through the white sea until he was knee-deep in the milky sea cloud. Before laying Enel's body down in the water to be swept away, returning to shore, he picked up the knife, staring at it for a moment before taking off into the air again. Luffy arrived back at Upper Yard to face the questioning looks of everyone gathered there. When asked what the verdict was, he simply presented the blood-covered sea stone knife in explanation. No one questioned him further. A couple hours after the events that would come to be known as the liberation of Skypia, the Shandians and Skypians alike were celebrating. Grateful for the end of the war, the Shandian chief allowed them to spend the night there, and even come and go as they pleased, provided that they did not attempt to take the land for themselves again. Gonfall, who was soon appointed the title of god again, readily agreed to these terms.
The Strafuts also joined in on the celebrations, needless to say. It wasn't long before they got another bonfire going.
Staring into the face of the enemy, I knew I would have to end it quickly. Usopp recounted to the crowd of Skypians that had gathered around for the tale of Captain Usopp's victory over God Enel. Repelling a barrage of lightning bolts with my slingshot, that's when I said, "Listen up, God Enel, complacent logias have short lifespans." Hey, a certain swordsman protested from where he was having a drinking contest with the Shandian warrior, Bram. "You just don't go down, do you?" the gunman asked sluggishly. "Well, that's my first mate for you," Luffy boasted proudly. "The only one who can drink him under the table is me, after all," said first mate scoffed. "Dream on, rubber brain, dream on." It wasn't hard to guess who the next drinking contest would be between. "Hey, can I get in on this?" another Shandian warrior asked. "Wiper," Bram greeted, "have your injuries healed?" "I'll be fine for now," Wiper replied. He was covered in bandages and his arm was in a sling. "That little raccoon guy can be pretty strict. Wouldn't let me rip these off even when I said I was fine." Zoro silently sympathized with the man's troubles. "Oh hey, Straw Hat, I meant to give you something," Wiper said, causing Luffy to look at him curiously. Wiper threw him a dial, which he caught. "This is my reject dial," Wiper said. "Your friend with the long nose was trading for some dials. They don't have them on the Blue Sea, right? I won't need it anymore, so consider it a gift." Luffy grinned. "Okay, sure, thanks." Early the following morning, Robin was making her way towards Giant Jack. There was something she needed to confirm, and the golden bell just may be the key. When she arrived at the base of the beanstalk, she caught sight of the Shandians cleaning off the bell as the chief observed, staring at an inscription in the side. Gonfall was there as well. "What do you think it says, Chief?" one of the Shandians asked. "I cannot decipher it," he answered, "but it is not part of our duty to know. Keep thy motives in heart, with closed mouth. We are those who will weave history with the ringing of the great belfry." The chief turned to her in shock. "How do you know those words?" he asked. "They were written on the ancient ruins of Shandora," she answered as she walked up to the bell. "You can decipher that ancient language?" the chief asked in amazement. "I'm the only one left who can," she replied absently. "I was right. There's a poneglyph embedded in the side." "Then, do you know what that says?" another Shandian asked, pointing to the inscription. "It reveals the location of the ancient weapon, Poseidon," came a voice from behind them. Robin turned around in surprise. "Luffy, he can read it too?" the chief asked incredulously. "No, I can't. I can hear it," Luffy corrected before turning to his archaeologist. "Don't lose hope just yet, Robin. Check the other inscription." Eyes widening, Robin turned back to the bell and caught sight of the writing on the bottom. "I have come here and will lead this passage to the farthest ends of the world, Goldie Roger." "So Roger came here too, huh?" Luffy concluded out loud. "Roger," Gonfall spoke up. "Do you know him? He was quite famous among pirates in the Blue Sea," Robin answered Ked. "He was executed 22 years ago," Luffy supplied. "I see. What a shame. He was a good man. I still remember when he came to visit, just over 24 years ago. He had quite the lively crew as well, Gonfall reminisced. So that means the Pirate King found this poneglyph 24 years ago, Robin said. Her brow furrowed. We'll lead this passage to the farthest ends of the world. Her eyes widened. Is it possible? The Rio poneglyph? On Raftel, Luffy concluded with a smirk. Works out pretty well, doesn't it? Luffy. Robin wasn't sure what to say, so instead she turned towards the Shandian chief. Chief, this poneglyph has already achieved its purpose, she stated, causing his eyes to widen. There are many poneglyphs scattered throughout the world. It seems one must link them all together in order to reveal the true history, something which only the Pirate King succeeded in doing. So then, we no longer have to fight? The chief asked with tears in his eyes. The will of our ancestors has been fulfilled? Robin smiled. That is correct. As the chief regained his composure, Robin turned back to Luffy. Captain San. Who are you, really? She asked. Luffy stared ahead, not meeting her eyes. What a silly question. You know who I am, he said. Robin let out a sigh. And you know a lot of things that you couldn't know, she replied.
You knew about Crocodile's plans before you even arrived at Whiskey Peak. At Luffy's raised eyebrow, she added a little guiltily, I was listening in once you came in contact with Princess Vivi. Not only that, but you were able to anticipate Crocodile's moves and outwit him on multiple occasions, as if you were familiar with how he thought, or you had inside information from the beginning. But I would have known if you had managed to infiltrate Baroque works. You are also impossibly strong for a rookie, and now it seems you already knew about the Rio poneglyph. Then, there's the fact that you made contact with the Revolutionary Army on Jaya. Luffy couldn't help but smile in amusement. You think I'm a revolutionary? I've considered the possibility, even if you don't really seem like the type, Robin said. He let out a dry laugh. You know, all things considered, it's not a bad guess. But if I wanted to hand you over to them, don't you think I would have done it back then? Robin looked down. I didn't mean to imply anything like that. I just can't help but be curious. There's so much about you that's a mystery, even to the other crew members. The only one who seems to know is Swordsman San. Well, I might as well tell you that I'm not with Dragon. I'm my own man, Luffy said, before sighing. You're right. We've been hiding things, Zoro and I. Nami and Sanji have begun to suspect it too, no doubt. It pertains to the entire crew, which is why I really wish we could just tell you. But we can't, not yet. He looked at her. But still, I don't want you to feel as if you can't ask. You can come to us about anything. That applies to everyone in the crew. Robin smiled. I know. Geez, what's taking Luffy and Robin so long? Zoro asked. He had already cut up all the gold and loaded it onto the ship with Sanji's help. Alright, set sail. We're leaving without them, he announced, only to have to dodge a kick from the chef. As if, you shitty swordsman, we're not leaving without Robin-chan. Or Luffy, Usopp added. Whatever, you wanna fight, you stupid cook? Zoro asked. You tried to kick me, so I assume you wanna fight. Bring it on, shitty moss head, Sanji shouted, not backing down. Yeah, bring it on, shitty moss head, Chopper echoed happily. Zoro glared at the reindeer, causing him to hide behind Sanji, the wrong way. Hey look, there they are, Nami shouted. The crew turned to see Luffy and Robin making their way to the ship. Hey guys, are we ready to set sail? The captain asked. Yes, the log is set. Nami replied. Alright then, in that case, he turned to the crowd of Skypians that was seeing them off. See you later, everyone. Bye, Luffy and Ikki, Isa shouted. Don't fall to your deaths. We won't, Luffy assured her. The others, minus Zoro, were wondering what they were talking about. The rest of the Skypians cheered for them as they raised anchor. They were about to set the tail, but Gonfall told them to keep it furled. Suddenly, the south bird that they had released when they arrived flew back onto the ship. After a brief conversation with Chopper, the reindeer relayed that the bird had wanted to meet the gigantic members of its own kind that resided in the sky. Apparently, its business was done now. Everyone hang on tight, Zoro said as the ship approached Cloud's End. Oh, Nami said as grabbed hold of the mast. You mean it's going to be another Milky Cloud ride? Luffy smirked. Something like that. The Going Merry fell off of Sky Island. What the fuck? Nami screamed as the rest of the crew started to panic, and Luffy started laughing. Suddenly, the ship's descent was slowed as it was seized by a giant octopus which took the shape of a balloon, essentially functioning as a parachute. I thought we were gonna die. Usopp wheezed from his prone position on the deck of the ship. Why didn't you warn us if you knew? Nami shouted indignantly. That wouldn't have been as fun, Luffy answered, before proceeding to dodge his navigator's punches and run around the deck as she chased him. Well, that got the adrenaline pumping, Sanji said as he lit a cigarette. Suddenly, the crew quieted. Hey, do you guys hear that? Chopper asked. Listening to the sound from above, they soon realized it was the sound of the golden bell being rung. The message was clear. Come back any time. It had been about an hour of floating downwards, and the Straw Hats were getting ready to have lunch.
It was then that the crew noticed Luffy staring out the window, brow furrowed. "Hey Luffy, what's up?" Zoro asked. Luffy turned to him. "Zoro, do you sense another presence on this ship?" he asked, much to the bewilderment of the crew. Zoro closed his eyes and focused, before opening them again. "Nope, it's just us, as far as I can tell," he replied.
Luffy hummed in thought before making his way outside. The rest of the crew followed behind out of curiosity. Luffy walked over to Nami's tangerine grove and reached his hand toward the vines.
"Hey, Luffy, you better not take one without asking," the navigator shouted. But when Luffy pulled his hand back, the fruit he was holding wasn't a tangerine. "Is that?" Robin asked, eyes wide. "It's definitely a devil fruit," Luffy confirmed. "I can feel the ominous aura radiating from it." "You can sense devil fruits too?" Sanji asked. "But why couldn't Zoro?" "It's something unique to him," the swordsman replied. "And a few others," Luffy said. "But anyway, that means this is," he trailed off. "The Guro no Mi," Robin finished. "It must have reincarnated when Enel died. To think we'd get our hands on one of the most powerful logias in existence." "Yeah, but does anyone here want to eat it?" Usopp asked. There were no volunteers. Of the 7 of them, 3 were devil fruit users already, and the rest had their own fighting styles they wanted to improve, as well as wanting to be able to swim. "So, what can we do with it?" Chopper asked. Suddenly, Nami's eyes glowed. "Wait, don't those sell for 100 million belly?" she asked excitedly. "Only if they're unidentified," Robin answered. "But this one is fairly well known and we'd know what we'd be selling. A logia this powerful could sell for 2 billion, most likely more." Nami actually started drooling. "Okay, before we get any ideas, who would we even sell it to that would be able to pay that much?" Zoro asked skeptically. "The only people that come to mind are the Marines," Sanji said. "I'd say that's out of the question," Robin said. "Even if they didn't try to just arrest us and confiscate it. We'd be promoting one of their vice admirals, which isn't really something we need to deal with," Luffy said. "So what does that leave?" Nami asked. "The black market," Sanji replied. "But even then, we don't know what kind of sketchy character we'd be helping out. So we can't sell it," she concluded, a rain cloud forming over her head that did not originate from her klima tact. "For now, we'll just hold on to it," Luffy decided. "Don't mention it to anyone until we can figure out what to do with it." It was another few minutes before the Going Merry finally met the waters of the Blue Sea once again. "You know, now that we're back down here," Usopp began. "It almost feels like a dream," Robin agreed. "Guys, I think we have a problem," Luffy said. "What is it?" Nami asked. Suddenly, multiple spotlights focused in on their ship, and the Straw Hats looked up to see that they were shining from the surrounding rock formations, which upon second glance, they seemed to be stranded by. "That," Luffy said. They had landed in the middle of a marine base. Halfway through the sea known to some as Paradise, there stood a marine base on the island of Navarone. Said island was actually more of a city-sized rock formation in the middle of the ocean. In its center was a mountain, which had been modified to accommodate the Marines' everyday activities, surrounded on all sides by seawater, but the body of water was isolated from the rest of the ocean by a circular wall of rock. Thanks in part to its unconventional structure, G8 was known for being the most high-security marine facility in the entire first half of the Grand Line, if you didn't count Marineford, of course. As a stronghold, it was impregnable, and as a prison, it was inescapable. Or so they say. It was around midday, and a few lower-ranked officers were making their regular patrols around the base, while singing their customary song to show their pride as G8 Marines. "I don't know, but I've been told," one chanted. "I don't know, but I've been told," 2 others chorused. "G8's a one hell of a stronghold, G8's a one hell of a stronghold. Pirates can attack until the sun goes down, pirates can attack until the sun goes down. Navarone's pride will turn them right back round. Navarone's pride will turn them right back round. Sound off, G8, sound off, G8, sound off." "Geez mate," the last soldier grumbled tiredly. "Will you give it a rest already? That's not even a real sound off. Stop making the newbies do ridiculous things." "Oh, not again, man," protested the soldier that was leading the chorus, who for sake of convenience will be called Optimistic Marine A. "You're always ruining my sound offs. And you're giving the new guys the wrong idea. There's nothing wrong with flaunting our proud G8 pride." "Who are you flaunting for anyway?" asked the other, who will be referred to as Skeptical Marine B. "There's no one here but G8 Marines." "Proud G8 pride? How did I get stuck on watch duty with this guy again?" "It's not that. The song is crucial for maintaining morale," Optimistic Marine A argued. "Morale for what? Face it, we haven't had a pirate attack in years. What pirate wants to stop in the middle of the Grand Line just to attack a marine base that takes in injured soldiers and repairs marine ships? I'm not saying our role isn't important, but the chances of a pirate attack are slim to none," Skeptical Marine B reasoned. "What kind of attitude is that? You always have to be ready regardless. You never know when pirates might drop in out of the sky," Optimistic Marine A claimed. Skeptical Marine B sighed. If that ever happens, let me know and I'll sing that little sound off while I charge headlong into battle. Hey, guys. One of the two newer Marines spoke up, getting their attention. What's that in the sky? The other three Marines followed his finger towards a large object that seemed to be floating down into the middle of the stronghold. Skeptical Marine B started to sweat. That could be anything. It looks like a ship to me, the other new guy observed.
Quote. It could be anyone. Isn't that a pirate's Jolly Roger? The first newbie asked. Quote. Shit. Alright guys, don't panic, Usopp said. For all they know, it could be anyone.
Remember that time you drew our Jolly Roger on the sails? Nami asked rhetorically. It hasn't gone anywhere. Shit. Vice Admiral Jonathan of Marine Headquarters, the commanding officer of the G8 Marine Base, was enjoying a midday fishing trip when he sighted a small pirate ship floating leisurely down into Navarrone's waters, being suspended by a giant balloon octopus. Said ship had now been sighted by the entire Marine Base, but wasn't making any aggressive or even evasive moves. It simply floated in the water idly, waiting for the full force of G8 to come down on it. Well shit. Sighted at 4 o'clock, a Marine warrant officer shouted from atop the center rock formation. As another Marine, a chief petty officer, zoomed in on the ship, he dropped his binoculars. That pirate flag. The skull is wearing a straw hat. Soon, there was an announcement heard throughout the base. Attention all personnel. Man your stations and prepare for battle. Navarone has been infiltrated by the Straw Hat pirates. Dozens of Marine soldiers lined the rocks, taking aim at the small vessel that was floating harmlessly in the water. Do not attempt to resist, shouted the voice of a lieutenant from a megaphone. You are completely surrounded, surrender peacefully. There was no answer. Not even a stirring. Vice Admiral Jonathan walked calmly towards his office, where he could sense Lieutenant Commander Drake already waiting for him. It seems there's quite the commotion out there, he said absently as he walked in. Vice Admiral, where have you been? I was fishing, he replied lazily. At a time like this, Drake asked. Well, it's not like I knew we'd be invaded. Don't worry about it. My fishing trips are never wasted. A Marine barged into his office and gave a quick salute. Sir, I finished conducting debriefings of the soldiers and dock mechanics who witnessed the invasion, he said. Oh, that was quick, Jonathan commented. So what's the verdict? The Marine's sweat dropped. Well, according to them. Drake grew impatient. What is it? Get on with the report. Yes, sir. Well, they say they saw a ghost, the Marine stammered, thinking back to the chaotic debriefing. Like I said, it floated down from the sky. There was this furry monster. It jumped off the ship, and then it was gone. Hands just sprouted all over me, and then everything went black. There was this weird wind surrounding the ship, we couldn't get close. The soldiers that went to investigate suddenly fell unconscious, but there was no one else there. There was this really creepy call, it's a ghost ship.
Preposterous. Drake shouted. That is without a doubt the sailing vessel of the Strafut pirates. There's no way it's a ghost ship. And you expect me to believe it just floated down from the sky.
Actually, that's the one thing we know for sure, Jonathan stated. Great. We're so screwed, Nami bemoaned. Not only were we forced to leave all the gold on the ship, but the devil fruit too. Even if we get out of here, how are we going to get those back? I wouldn't worry about it, Zoro dismissed. I doubt there's anyone in this whole base that can stand up to us anyway.
Still, it wouldn't be prudent to go fighting our way through Navarone, Robin said. It would pay to be more discreet. For now, they won't do anything with the gold, other than keep it hidden from us, or perhaps use it to lure us out. I'm a little disconcerted about the Guro no Mi, however. There's no telling what they'll do with that.
Don't worry about the devil fruit, Luffy said with a smirk. I took care of it. For now, we just need to get the gold back, and also figure out a way out of here. He stood up from where they were crouched in the forest area near the water. To be honest, it would be boring if we just brute forced our way out. It's what we do every time, he said. Would you guys say we try to exercise our sense of strategic planning this time around? We have a sense of strategic planning? Chopper asked excitedly. Robin giggled. Let's find out. So, what's the plan, Captain San? Luffy thought for a moment. Alright, Operation Straw Hat Outbreak will consist of 3 phases. He turned and faced his crewmates. Phase 1. Blend in. This place should have an infirmary for sick or injured soldiers. Chopper and Nami, disguise yourselves as a doctor and nurse. Chopper will actually know what he's doing when it comes to treating wounds. Nami, you're good at infiltration, so make sure Chopper doesn't blow his cover. Occupy yourselves with that until we're ready to leave. You'll know when that is, since there will be a signal. The two nodded, and Luffy turned to Sanji. You and I will pretend to be chefs. It'll be easy for you since you're a damn good one. As for me. You want to eat the food, Sanji guessed. Luff sighed, got it. Luffy turned to Usopp next. I need you to keep an eye on the ship. According to Robin, this place repairs damaged marine ships, so disguise yourself as a dock mechanic. Zoro will be in the area, But he won't join you since he'll stand out too much with those 3 swords of his. Usopp saluted. Finally, Luffy turned to Robin. You're probably the best at this stuff, so I need you to pretend to be someone of high standing. If you succeed, vouch for the others if you have to. Roger, Captain, Robin said with a smile. Phase 2. Gather intel. Blending in will just be stalling if we don't figure out a way out of here. So once you guys are in position, ask around and see if there's a way to sail out of the base. He got nods all around. Phase 3. Outbreak. That should speak for itself. Any questions? There were none. Now then, the signal for outbreak will be.
Vice Admiral Jonathan walked down a hallway with Lieutenant Commander Drake and a couple other officers at his side. It seems the ship has been to the island of Jaya recently, Jonathan revealed. The call we heard was that of a south bird. It was the one we saw flying away from the ship upon our arrival. Those birds are native to the dense forests of Jaya. Now listen to this. On that island there's a legend about an ancient city of gold. Sound familiar?
One of the officers listened with wide eyes. All that gold we found on board. I knew it had to come from somewhere. But what are the chances? I would normally say slim, but the facts speak for themselves. Needless to say, that's no ghost ship. The Straw Hat Pirates passed by Jaya on their way here. Sir, I have a recommendation, said Drake. We should organize a search team to track down their crew at once. Please assign my team to the task. Well, let's not be hasty, Jonathan replied. For now, we need to strengthen our defenses so they can't slip in or out. You, he said, turning to an ensign. Fortify our defenses around the bay and sea gate. Yes sir, the Marine said before walking away. You fortify the penitentiary and the central corridor, he said to a lieutenant. You'll also be in charge of assigning personnel. The officer saluted before taking his leave. Lieutenant Commander, wait an hour and then thoroughly search any areas where large groups of people gather, he instructed. Large groups of people? Drake questioned. That's right. To hide a tree, use a forest. If the Straw Hat Pirates were to disguise themselves as Marines. Drake gasped in realization. I'm not saying I don't trust your men's abilities, but there's a strong possibility that the pirates will conceal themselves with stolen uniforms, Jonathan finished. Start with the mess halls. Pirates are usually a ravenous bunch. Yes sir, Drake replied before leaving in haste. Jonathan turned toward the window, from which he had a view of the Strawwood's ship, deep in thought. The South Bird was carrying something. In a quiet, isolated hallway, a lone Marine made his patrol around the base, rifle in hand. As he walked through the secluded corridor, he couldn't help but get the sneaking suspicion that he was being followed. He stopped walking and listened, but there wasn't a noise to be heard. Shrugging it off, he continued walking, only to hear a second set of footsteps coming from behind him. Okay, that wasn't his imagination. He swiftly turned around, but there was nothing there. He swallowed and turned around to continue walking, only to hear the footsteps again. He stopped in his tracks, and this time, the footsteps continued after he stopped walking. Eyes widening, he turned around again, rifle loaded. Again, there was nothing. I'm going batshit insane out here, he muttered before turning back around. He came face to face with a smiling Monkey D. Luffy. He didn't even have time to utter a sound before he blacked out. Zoro watched from afar as Usopp walked over to a group of ship mechanics who were loading in the Going Merry, claiming to be new. It had been easy enough for them to secure a Marine uniform. The sniper probably could have done it himself. His presence was just overkill. Still, even if Usopp could lie with the best of them, he had a terrible poker face once he aroused any suspicion. So he was basically here to shadow the undercover mechanic while he gained access to their ship. Easy enough. He kept a firm lock on Usopp's aura as the sniper climbed onto the Going Merry and out of sight. Nami inwardly sighed as she got ready to tend to another patient. Upon arriving at the infirmary, they had realized that there was only one doctor, and the nurses were frantically trying to gain control over the situation since there were Marines that had come in wounded from a naval battle. The problem was that the only doctor was a woman who got completely queasy at the thought of blood. It had taken an inspirational speech from Chopper just to get her to cope, and now the saintly little reindeer seemed more preoccupied with treating the Marines than anything. Which meant that the task of gathering information fell to her. Kabato-sensei. She spoke up, gaining the attention of the now focused woman who had finished operating. I was wondering, these injured Marines came in from sea right. How is it that they let people in and out of Navarone? Isn't the lake isolated from the ocean? Oh, you didn't know? Kabato asked, causing Nami to sweat. She had to assume that anyone stationed at G8 would know that already. It's not a lake. The waters of Navarone are connected to the sea through a small channel that runs through the island on the southwest side. They use the gates in that channel to let people in and out. Nami breathed a sigh of relief as the next patient came in. Thank God. This woman is completely oblivious. So, you two are the Marley brothers, said a stern-looking woman who Sanji guessed was the head chef. Marley brothers? Were those the two poor excuses for chefs that we knocked out and stuffed in the closet before stealing their uniforms? Sanji thought. Yep, that's us, the chef answered, while Luffy, being a terrible liar, opted to remain silent.
That food looks really good. Can I eat some? He asked instead, causing Sanji to inwardly groan. Chefs weren't supposed to eat the food they prepared. It seemed his captain simply couldn't help himself sometimes.
As if. That food is being prepared for the Marines of G8, Jessica, the head chef answered, and if you're going to be stationed here, know that you'll have to prove yourselves to me first. I won't let you call yourself a chef of Navarone if you lack the heart and soul. Sanji hummed. So, in other words, you want to show us a thing or two about cooking, he inferred. Nothing so discourteous, she replied. I simply want to know how deep your pride runs. I'll give anyone a chance to prove themselves, even stuck-up chefs from Mariajoy. But if you don't have the skills we expect, you'll be nothing but a nuisance to the other chefs. Sounds interesting, mademoiselle, Sanji said, before smirking. I accept your challenge. Robin hid stealthily behind a wall as she watched the new arrival, who had just disembarked from the ship that had docked, argue with a young Marine soldier.
As I said, I have no obligation to tell you my rank and attachment, the man said with an air of importance. Bring me to the commanding officer of this base at once.
I'm sorry, but Vice Admiral Jonathan is currently eating lunch, and it is against G8's policy to interrupt a Marine's meal except in case of extreme urgency. So in other words, you're saying that a man's lunch is more important than the matters I have to address? The other man asked threateningly. Yes, that is correct, sir, the Marine answered. Robin couldn't help herself as a small smile graced her lips. I had to give props to that Marine. The new arrival wasn't amused, however. Fine, I'll get in contact with Command Center myself. By the way, you may want to consider which backwater post you'd like to be transferred to, he said as he watched young Marine to grimace a bit. Robin followed after the man silently. Luffy did say to impersonate someone of high standing. Hopefully this man isn't just full of hot air. As it happens, I may just be aiding that young upstart's career in the process.
Sanji sighed. It was still early in the afternoon, but he had yet to actually gather any information. He had gotten so caught up in cooking and wooing Jessica that he'd forgotten about the intel part. Still, Luffy didn't seem to care. In fact, he was in heaven.
New boy. Touch that plate and I'll have your head, you got that? Yes, ma'am. Luffy saluted, despite the fact that he was still drooling over the plate of meatballs that Sanji had just prepared. Sanji chuckled. Well, at least she's not turning a blind eye to it anymore, Sanji commented. I know she's taken a liking to him for his appetite, but there are limits. Oh, that's not why, one chef remarked slyly. It's just that plate is for her husband. Her husband? Sanji asked. Damn, so, who's this luckiest bastard in Navarone then? It's the commanding officer, Vice Admiral Jonathan, the chef replied. Sanji's eyes widened. Just our shitty luck. Luffy stood across from a laid-back looking man who was staring down at the meatballs in interest. Enjoy your meal, he said with a grin. Of course, thank you, the man replied before eating the first bite. Luffy turned to walk away. He really wanted to eat what was on that plate, and would have, if not for the fact that the man in front of him radiated power. To be more precise, around the level of power of an experienced vice admiral. So, he's the commanding officer here. Man, those meatballs looked so good. Oh well, too bad. I guess I'll keep my cover for now. You know, Straw Hat Luffy, or not. Now that I see you in person, you really don't seem like the type to break into Marine bases. Would you mind telling me what your objective here is? He really should have suppressed his aura. Hindsight was such a bitch. Well, since you know who I am, Luffy began as he turned back around. There's no longer any reason for me not to eat those meatballs. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Oh, these? Here, you can have the rest, he offered, pushing his plate forward. Hey, thanks, you're a pretty nice guy, Luffy exclaimed, before digging in. One could almost say the same about you, Jonathan commented. Freeing an island from Arlong's rule, saving the desert kingdom of Alabasta from crocodiles' clutches. You have yet to actually do anything notorious other than evade capture. The world government wants your head simply because it's their unspoken policy to capture anyone with strength such as yours who isn't affiliated with them. Anyone with your level of power is either a Marine, a government agent, or a threat. They do tend to think that way, Luffy agreed with a mouthful of food. So then, is there any particular reason why you decided to invade our humble base? I must say, your method of transportation was quite original. Oh, that, Luffy acknowledged. To be honest, it was an accident. We were coming back down from Sky Island and our octopus balloon just happened to land us in the middle of your humble base. Well, that's quite the eccentric tale, Jonathan said in amusement. So, in other words, you weren't infiltrating at all. Nevertheless, since you're wanted pirates, it is sadly our duty to capture you here. Yeah, that sucks, Luffy agreed again as he finished the food on the plate. You don't seem to be very worried. Is that arrogance or confidence? Jonathan couldn't help but ask. Luffy shrugged. You found me, but the rest of my crew is still hidden. You might have a plan to find them, but if you do, I'll know. For now I'd like to see how things play out, but if worst comes to worst, I'll just destroy the island. I see, Jonathan said with a hint of amusement. And if I capture you here? Then Zoro will destroy the island, Luffy said as he set the plate down. But, he smirked. That's assuming you can capture me. Hey, you, Lieutenant Commander Drake called out, causing Usopp to freeze in his tracks. Are you new here? What's your rank? Seaman first class? Usopp said, not knowing that many marine ranks. Is that a question? The backbone on these new recruits is awe-inspiring, Drake drawled. Fine, what's your attachment? Unit 18, Usopp said randomly. Unit 18 is the sniper corps, I believe. Don't you know this dock is off limits except to the mechanics? Oh, that's right. I'm in the sniper corps, so what am I doing here? Usopp exclaimed. Sorry, you know his new recruits. Well, I'll just be on my way then, he said, as a certain swordsman in the shadows palmed his face in irritation. No need. Men, arrest him, Drake said. Usopp shrieked as he was surrounded by Marines pointing rifles at him. Just so you know, Unit 18 is the supply division, the veteran officer mocked as he turned and began to walk away. As the Marines began leading Usopp away, a figure leapt out from behind the Going Merry. In a fraction of a second, Drake's men were left staring at their bisected guns in shock. Sorry to cut and run, Zoro said with a smirk, before he pulled Usopp away, and swung his sword in a downward arc. A fierce wind roared to life around the two, causing the Marines to shield their faces, and when it settled down, they were gone. A vein visibly bulged in Drake's forehead. To his left, another Marine officer snickered. Cut and run, I get it, he said, chuckling. Drake glared at the Master Chief Petty Officer, who simply turned his head away and started whistling. Vice Admiral Jonathan stared out the window that Straw Hat Luffy and his chef friend, who had turned out to be Black Leg Sanji, had escaped through. The pirate captain was much faster than he would have guessed. What's more, he was seemingly able to use Rokushiki, or at least two of its forms. It was mid-afternoon now, and it would be troubling if the pirate captain found what he was looking for before nightfall. This would require further meditation.
Vice Admiral, an officer has arrived from Marine headquarters and requests to speak with you. She declined to reveal her rank and attachment, reported an officer at the door.
Very well, send her in, Jonathan said. Hello, Vice Admiral, greeted the woman, whose face Jonathan easily recognized. My name is Inspector Shepard. I am here to conduct a full inspection of your facility on behalf of Marine headquarters. Ah, come in, Inspector. I was told you'd be coming. Is there anything you'll be needing to aid in your inspection? Jonathan asked. Robin inwardly groaned at the tone of his voice. He knows who I am. It's times like these when I wish I wasn't so recognizable. I'll be requiring use of your library for records of your structural and design mechanics, Robin said, keeping up the act. Of course. Ensign, led her to the library, if you please. As she was led away, Robin's eyes narrowed. He knows who I am, and yet, rather than arresting me, he's handing me the information on a silver platter? Is he that confident? Jonathan was deep in thought as Nico Robin left the room. So, you'll know if I arrest your crewmates, Straw Hat? In that case, let's hold off on that for now. Now, we have Nico Robin in the library, Straw Hat Luffy and Black Leg Sanji running around the island somewhere, and from Lieutenant Commander Drake's latest report, Roronoa Zoro is loose in the base as well, along with one other. Lieutenant, increase security around the dock where the Strawid's ship is being held, he ordered, earning a salute from the officer. That leaves two more. Perhaps Drake's latest search will bear fruit. For the next couple hours, all was relatively quiet. Despite his efforts, Jonathan only had tabs on 3 of the pirates. One was impersonating a master inspector, and 2 were masquerading as a surgeon and nurse of G8, although to be fair, the latter 2 imposters were at the very least taking the job seriously from what he'd seen. Still, when he had taken a visit to Auras had revealed their true affiliations easily enough. Nightfall was approaching, and Jonathan knew for certain that something big would happen soon. He just didn't know what. It was then that Jonathan heard a familiarly strange call echoing from atop the mountain. It was an extremely loud call. He wouldn't be surprised if the entire base heard it. Cho, choo, choo, Jonathan frowned. That's the call of the south bird that we heard when they first arrived. What is it still doing here? Throughout Navarone, 7 pirates were all thinking the same thing. That's the signal. All at once, chaos erupted all over G8. Roronoa Zoro had appeared on the bridge and started causing destruction left and right, causing a large concentration of Marines to be dispatched there to apprehend him. Meanwhile, the new doctor who had been treating injured Marines suddenly abandoned his station, although the nurses noted that he had miraculously finished treating all of the Marines before doing so. One of the nurses had left to follow him. On the other side of the base, Straw Hat Luffy himself had appeared and was causing a racket, along with Black Leg Sanji and an unidentified sniper. To make things worse, Inspector Shepard from Marine headquarters had abandoned her inspection and joined them, despite the efforts of the Marines sent to observe her, revealing that she probably wasn't a real inspector in retrospect. Chopper and Nami had made it to the bridge and met up with Zoro, who was mowing through unfortunate Marine soldiers left and right. Didn't we say we weren't going to brute force our way out? Nami protested loudly over the shouting of Marines. Believe me, if we really wanted to brute force our way out, there wouldn't be much left of this rock by now, Zoro retorted. Are we meeting up with Luffy and the others? Chopper asked. Not yet. We have to get the Mary into open waters while Luffy gets the gold back. Then we can regroup and get out of here, the swordsman said. As countless Marines obstructed their path off the bridge, Zoro raised a single sword. One sword style, 360 caliber Phoenix. He shouted as close to 100 Marines were thrown off the bridge by the blast of wind. Let's go. As the Marines desperately tried to get the situation under control, one scrambled to report to Vice Admiral Jonathan. Sir, Black Leg Sanji is heading to the vault where the confiscated gold is being held, along with 2 others. One of them is the imposter inspector. Jonathan sighed. Perhaps it wasn't the best idea to just let her get that information, but still, I didn't think they'd be this organized. Not only were they waiting for a signal, but they were able to group together in the blink of an eye. I should assume that Monkey D. Luffy at the very least can use observation haki. Not that it matters. They won't find what they're looking for. You said 2 others, Jonathan clarified. Is Straw Hat Luffy among them? No sir. We've lost track of the captain, but are currently conducting a search for him, the Marine answered. I'd say there's no need for that, Jonathan said. Wouldn't you agree, Monkey D. Luffy? The Marine who was making the report turned around in shock to be greeted by the subject of their discussion standing in the doorway. He was about to draw his sword, but a look from Jonathan as well as a shake of the head dissuaded him. Your crewmates sure are making quite the ruckus at the moment, Jonathan commented. Is there a reason you came here? I wanted to ask you something, Luffy said. Well, you did allow me a round of questions, so that only seems fair, Jonathan agreed. Why aren't you fighting? Luffy asked, causing him to raise an eyebrow. Deciding to elaborate, he continued. You're a vice admiral. You have years of experience in battles that you hide behind that tranquil mask of yours. You can use both armaments and observation haki. And yet, you're sitting on the sidelines giving out orders. I just can't help but wonder why. I suppose I may come off as a bit lazy in your eyes, Jonathan said. But I suppose my reason is the same as the one you provided for not simply destroying the island. There's no need.
Luffy looked amused. No need. Your base has been infiltrated by pirates wanted dead or alive. Your naval defenses are halfway between formalities and decorations. Every Marine in this base is cannon fodder, save for you. What super secret trump card do you have yet to unveil?
I think you overestimate me, Jonathan drawled. There is no super secret trump card, as you so quaintly put it. Although it may have been covered up, I am high up enough in the ranks to have knowledge of the events following Crocodile's defeat in Alabasta. And while I may be confident in my skills, I am not so delusional as to believe that I alone will succeed where the combined might of 3 men of my own rank have failed. In addition, the location of our naval base is far too remote for us to call for sufficient reinforcements from Marineford. Luffy looked disappointed. So, what? You're just giving up? He asked, pouting a bit.
Not quite. You see, I tend to look at the big picture of things. There is the tree, and there is the forest. There is a single island, and then there is an ocean of them. There is the battle, and then there is the war. Sometimes, to win the war, you need to look at more than just a single battle.
Luffy suddenly looked annoyed. You've been gathering intel, he stated. Something like that. You will escape from us today. I have no doubt about that. But I can't help but feel as though the report I give to Admiral Akainu afterwards could cause quite the headache for you all, depending on my own discretion, of course. Luffy stared at him blandly. And if I kill you now so you can never give him that report? Then he will take note of my cause of death regardless, and that would become an even bigger headache for you. But that's assuming you do kill me. Once again, it really does not seem like your style, Monkey D. Luffy. The Straw Hat Captain rolled his eyes before turning toward the gargantuan sack of gold in the corner of the room and throwing it over his shoulder. I'll be taking this if you don't mind. Sure. I'd ask you not to injure too many of my men on your way out, Jonathan called. Tell them to stand down, and they'll have no problems from us, was Luffy's reply. Soon after the Straw Hat Pirates met up at the Going Merry, Vice Admiral Jonathan called for an armistice, which the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates agreed to. While Lieutenant Commander Drake protested loudly against it. A quick summary of their losses, including damages to the facility, and a recount of Marine casualties since the pirates arrived was enough to change his mind. After that, the pirates sailed out unimpeded, unless one counted the lone Marine who jumped onto their ship and attacked with a cry of, "I don't know, but I've been told." The attack was unsuccessful. Rather than using the small channel that the Marines left open for them, however, the Straw Hat Pirates opted to fly out through use of a giant balloon octopus, which was inflated using Usopp's breath dials and propelled using Luffy's reject dial. All in all, it was a rather anticlimactic ending to a one-sided slaughter that nevertheless inspired the soldiers of G8 to be ever more vigilant against flying pirates.
Hey, wait. Nami shouted. What's with the fucking resolution? This shit isn't over. She pointed at Luffy accusingly. What the hell happened to the Guro Guro no Mi? You said you took care of it. You do realize that if we left that behind.
Chew! Came the familiar call of the South bird. The now tame bird flew through the Going Merry and dropped the devil fruit in question into Luffy's outstretched hand, before taking off into the sunset.
Okay, now we're done, Luffy said with a grin. On the island of Jaya, a crowd had gathered around a certain bar in Mock Town to witness what was rumored to be a fight to the death between comrades.
Please, make them stop, one of the crew members of the two combatants shouted. Her pleas were answered by a sinister chuckle which by no means conveyed an intent to comply. Enough already. Why are you doing this, Sarkis? One of the combatants tried to reason. The taunting laughter only intensified.
Why, you ask? What other reason could there be? Sarkis, Bellamy, you two have tarnished my flag that you so proudly flaunt around as if it were your own. Sky Island, the city of gold. I don't care whether they exist or not. As long as you were undefeated, I would allow you to spread whatever petty ideals you deem fit.
It's hopeless, one of the observers whispered. There's no way they can win. That's Don Quixote Doflamingo. Are you kidding? One of the 7 warlords? Another asked quietly. He used to have a bounty of over 300 million. What's he doing here? But now that you've been put in your place by a bunch of hopeless dreamers, as you put it, there's really no room for you as my underlings, is there? Doflamingo continued. As Sarki's blade rose against his will, he cursed. Damn it, don't make me do this. His pleas once again went unanswered as his arm was forced to swing the blade towards an immobile Bellamy unmercifully. Please, Bellamy rasped from his position on the ground. Give me one more chance, even if it takes years. I'll get to where you stand one day. Doflamingo laughed in amusement. Do you really think a peon like you has what it takes to survive the new world? Very well, do as you wish. The new era I've envisioned is approaching. However, he turned his back and started walking away. I have no place for you in my ranks, he stated matter-of-factly. Doflamingo, Bellamy shouted in desperation as Sarki's knife came down again.
What's wrong? You're slowing down, Luffy noted as he smiled with his eyes closed and his hands in his pockets. Across from him stood Sanji, panting heavily but still focused. Nearby, Zoro was continuing the rest of the crew's training to awaken their haki, while Luffy was training Sanji personally at the chef's request.
Sanji dashed forward again, but his opening kick was dodged easily as Luffy simply leaned back to avoid it. The next hail of kicks were just as casually avoided as the Straw Hat Captain swayed back and forth in between the blows. Focusing on predicting his movements, Sanji went in for a feint, which seemed to achieve the desired effect, and the actual kick was blocked by Luffy's forearm. Before he could react, Sanji had been grabbed by the leg and thrown back to his starting position. Too slow, Luffy commented, earning an annoyed grunt from the chef. I noticed, you rubber bastard. Why don't you open your damn eyes now? Luffy only smirked. Why don't you make me? Sanji complied, or at least attempted to, as he spun rapidly in a circle before going on the offensive again. Leg ablaze this time. Every kick he threw was once again dodged effortlessly. He could try to predict Luffy's movements, but the rubber man could do the same with his counters to said movements, and it was easier to see whose observation haki was superior. Not only that, but he was suppressing his aura, so Sanji was having trouble getting a read on it to begin with. After a couple minutes, Sanji winced and the inferno around his leg ceased as his current limit for Diabol Hambi was reached. What brought this on? Luffy couldn't help but ask. You seemed content with your progress just recently. Now you're working twice as hard as before. Not that I don't encourage it, but is there any reason? It's not that I'm not satisfied already, Sanji muttered.
I don't have big, grandiose dreams like you or Zoro.
My goal is just to find all blue and be the best chef I can be, he admitted.
But I've started to realize recently, if we're going to keep running into guys like Crocodile and Enel, I'm only going to be in the way. He grunted again as he got to his feet. You two are way ahead of the rest of us, and for a while, I was content with that. But like you said when we started doing this, there's going to come a time when you two have your hands full, and when that day comes, I won't be a liability.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Luffy said. So, what will you do? First, I'm going to wipe that smug grin off your face, the chef shouted before charging in again, only for Luffy to disappear from his sight. You'll have to catch me first, the rubber man taunted from behind him. He spun around and aimed a kick at the location of his aura, but he only disappeared again. Sanji's eyes roamed around the deck of the Going Merry as his captain constantly blurred in and out of sight.
Something was different than usual. If he was really just taunting him, he wouldn't be able to see Luffy at all. Which meant he was going slow intentionally. Sanji narrowed his eyes and focused his observation haki on his captain's movements, following his blurred form as it drew closer and closer to him. His legs were in constant motion, slowing down only for an instant as his form became more defined, and then speeding up again as he disappeared from sight. So that's how it is. As each jump brought the rubber man closer and closer, Sanji got into a ready stance. As he sensed Luffy closing in, he kicked the floor 10 times in an instant, resulting in a leap backwards that was much faster than what he could usually accomplish, just as Luffy's legs swept through the area he was previously occupying. Now, he leapt forward again and feinted a kick at Luffy's head. When he predictably, or perhaps indulgently, vanished from sight in response, Sanji went through the same series of movements again, and tracking him with his haki, aimed another kick at his sternum. As the two appeared back into sight, Luffy was holding Sanji's leg, preventing it from reaching him.
You learned Soru. I'm impressed, Luffy said with a grin. Yeah, Sanji said, before collapsing back into a sitting position. But it puts a lot of strain on my legs. I can see why you waited until now to teach me. You'll get used to it soon, Luffy said. When I first started using it, I didn't really notice the strain. Rubberman and all. But I did notice that it got easier to use pretty quickly.
Sanji learned something again. Usopp asked. Why do I feel like he's always the only one?
It helps that he has more physical conditioning than the rest of you, Zoro said. Or, maybe you're just not trying hard enough, Usopp. Hey, that's not fair. I think I'm starting to get the hang of this hockey stuff. Zoro raised an eyebrow, and Usopp faltered a bit. Sort of. Maybe. A little. Well, I'm still not having any progress, so I think I'll just stick to my Klimattack for now. How are those upgrades coming along by the way? Usopp lit up at the reminder. Oh, they're coming along. Those dials are worth more than their weight in gold. You'll be lighting up enemies before they even know what lit them up. Nami smiled. Thanks, just tell me when they're ready so I can test them out for myself, she requested. Of course, it might interest you to know that my own arsenal has been improved as well. He trailed off as Nami was already walking away, not having heard him. Hey. A couple of hours passed uneventfully, unless you counted the octopus balloon's heartfelt farewell, the giant sea monkeys which Luffy tamed, or the seemingly depressed pirate crew they passed on the way, which strangely enough had no flag or sails. After lunch, everyone continued hockey training, but once again, there were no breakthroughs to speak of. Despite that sad fact, many of the crew members couldn't help but notice that the training nevertheless helped their physical conditioning, which was pretty essential in any fight. Afterwards, Luffy and Zoro instructed them to start sparring in order to evaluate each other's strengths and weaknesses. At this point, Usopp Todley suggested a tournament bracket. This normally would have been ignored, if not for the fact that Luffy announced his strong support for the idea just as loudly. Which led to the Straw Hat Pirates now competing in a tournament. The fights would consist of hand-to-hand combat only, which meant no weapons and no devil fruit powers. In Chopper's case, this meant he could only use one form. He wisely picked Heavy Point. For the benefit of the devil fruit users, Luffy declared that you were out of the fight if you fell off the Mary, whether you could swim or not. You were also out if you gave up or were held down for 10 seconds. Hey, wait, Chopper said suddenly. Sanji only specializes in physical combat. How is he not going to win this? A better question is, how is he going to win at all if he can't even attack half of his opponents? The chef asked in retort as he walked over to the sidelines to stand next to Luffy and Zoro. Have fun, everyone. This caused Robin to giggle and Usopp to pout. You're no fun, Sanji. This was your idea to begin with, Sanji argued. Next time, think it through, shithead. This is terribly uneven. Although Usopp protested loudly at this, the chef was soon proven right. The first fight was between Usopp and Chopper. Although Usopp was by no means incapable of throwing a good punch, he simply wasn't in the same league as Chopper's heavyweight form. The first minute of the fight consisted of Usopp throwing punches while Chopper blocked them, too timid to do anything else against a crewmate. He soon got over it when the sniper declared that there were no holds barred even in a fight between comrades, but nevertheless assured him that he would be fine. Emboldened by this assurance, Chopper proceeded to subject Usopp to a wrestling hold that kept him down for 10 seconds, ending the fight. I have no regrets, Usopp claimed as he went to stand next to the monster trio, making a show of standing by his idea, even though Luffy could tell he was disappointed at having lost first. Alright, the next fight is between Nami and Robin. As the two women of the crew stood across from each other, Nami cringed. Aren't you an assassin? She asked nervously. I was, Robin answered with a calm smile. Aren't you a thief? That's not very assuring. And, start, Usopp shouted, ignoring the navigator's reservations. At first, neither one of them moved. After a few moments of waiting each other out, Robin took a step forward, causing Nami to take a step back. Robin laughed lightly. I'm not going to hurt you, Navigator-san, so don't worry so much, she said. Nami seemed to calm down after that, and as it was soon revealed, she did know some basic self-defense even without the Klimattack. She would have to in order to survive stealing from pirates for 8 years, even East Blue pirates. And the conditioning she'd received from the hockey training seemed to help. Unfortunately for Nami, her experience seemed to pale in comparison to Robin's, and it didn't take long for the archaeologist to sweep a leg out from under her before pinning her to the ground with one arm pulled behind her back. The winner is Robin, Usopp shouted after 10 seconds of struggling on Nami's part. You sure seem to be enjoying this, Nami grumbled as she walked over to stand with the observers. Of course, tournament matches are also part of a man's romance, the sniper exclaimed, causing Nami to look at him quizzically. Walking sticks, swinging from vines, and now this, Where do you get this crap from? Usopp elected to ignore her, instead announcing the next spar. Now for the finals. It's the heavyweight Tony Chopper versus the quick and nimble Nico Robin. Chopper looked nervous again, but Robin merely smiled and said, "Let's have a good match, Dr. San." The reindeer nodded. This spar lasted noticeably longer. Chopper was too strongly built for Robin to get him into a submission hold, but Robin was too agile and light on her feet for Chopper to get a hit in or pin her down. Of the two of them, Chopper was more versed in hand-to-hand combat, but Robin was more analytical and moved with a calculated grace that the reindeer couldn't quite match as she dodged or redirected his blows. She was careful not to get hit and careful not to give him any openings to subdue her, but she also couldn't really hope to overpower him. Eventually, she was seemingly cornered at the edge of the merry. Her back was to the water as Chopper came in for a blow. "Robin-chan, watch out!" Sanji shouted in worry as it seemed she was about to back into open air. Instead, she stood her ground until Chopper got close, before moving aside, grabbing him by the arm, and using his forwards momentum to actually flip him off the deck of the ship and into the water.
Zoro sighed. "I'll get him," the swordsman volunteered, before jumping overboard and retrieving the soaked reindeer, who coughed up some water before changing back into his hybrid form.
"I lost," he pouted, causing Robin to actually feel slightly guilty. "Well, you're all improving," Zoro commented, still in instructor mode.
"Nami, you can defend yourself if it comes to it, but you're too tense. Even if you know how to counter your opponent, it won't matter if you're too stiff to do anything about it. But once you gain more experience, you'll be more relaxed in a fight." He turned to Usopp. "You have the same problem. I know for a fact that you can take a hit with the best of them, but that won't hold you over for long if you freeze up." They both nodded, and Zoro turned to Chopper. "Chopper, your main issue in heavy point is your speed, but that won't be as much of a problem when you can use your devil fruit freely. Honestly, the best thing for you right now is just to keep training your speed and strength. The more you do that, the stronger your transformations will be. I also think you could benefit in training your devil fruit some more, but we'll leave that for later." Chopper looked excited at the thought of enhancing his devil fruit powers.
Next, Zoro turned towards Robin. "You had the least problems as far as I saw. You may not have as much muscle as Chopper, but your devil fruit powers make up for that. Other than Luffy, me, and the cook, you have the best reflexes in the crew. The only thing I'd suggest is getting your speed up so that you can make the best use of them. Even if you can see an attack coming, you can't always stop it unless you can move in time." Robin nodded thoughtfully. Finally, Zoro turned towards Sanji. "Cook," he trailed off. "You suck," he finished. Sanji's eye twitched. "Alright, good job, everyone," Luffy shouted. "Nami, how's our course?" he asked. "It's right on target," the navigator replied. "We should be arriving soon." "Great, hey Robin, can you look out for an island?" Luffy asked. "Roger," she said, making her way up to the crow's nest. "Hey, Luffy," Zoro said, subtly getting the captain's attention. Luffy looked at him to see that he had a serious expression on his face. "It's almost that time," the swordsman conveyed. Luffy nodded as he remembered which island they were about to arrive at. They had been blown a little off course compared to last time, so they took more time to actually get here. But they had also spent less time in Skypia, and there was no telling how long the adversary they were both thinking of would wait for them. A laid-back, lethargic, and very dangerous adversary. "Keep your senses sharp when we get to the island," he conveyed back. Their short staring contest ended, no one having noticed it as Luffy continued walking and Zoro leaned back against the mast, seemingly asleep. "Mon, I'm bored," Luffy mumbled an hour later. "Hey Robin, have you caught any glimpse of that island yet?" "Yes, a while ago actually," she responded from the crow's nest. Usopp looked scandalized. "What do you mean, a while ago? When you see an island you're supposed to shout, 'Land ho,'" the sniper claimed. "That sounds like too strange of a reaction for my tastes," Robin replied. "But I'll let you know next time each the island," which was a wide empty plain filled with really tall trees. Luffy, Chopper, and Usopp all took off, eager for some sightseeing. As the rest of the crew got ready to depart, Zoro simply stared out at the island with narrowed eyes. "Is something wrong, Swordsman-san?" Robin asked, coming up next to him. This seemed to snap him out of whatever trance he was in. "No, it's nothing," Zoro answered, piquing Robin's curiosity. He then looked back at the fog over the ocean. "It looks like we're about to have some company though." Luffy looked in every direction in an attempt to find what he was looking for. But no matter how many times he extended his senses outwards, he couldn't feel anything. Either his target was hiding his aura really well, or he wasn't there. He hadn't considered the latter option up until now. "Wow, there's really nothing in sight. It's empty," Usopp commented. "Yeah, completely empty," Luffy muttered quietly, brow furrowed. "Luffy, you okay?" Chopper asked, snapping him out of his daze. "Yeah, I'm fine. Hey, is that a house over there?" he asked, pointing out into the distance. "You're right. Let's go check it out," Usopp said. On the way there, the trio encountered a large variety of strange animals, which consisted of elongated bears, elongated dogs, elongated deer, and even elongated birds. Come to think of it, they were all elongated. When they arrived at the house, they found a particularly friendly white giraffe, which was in reality an elongated horse. Chopper conveyed that her name was Shelly. Apparently she was alone here on the island, which Chopper found to be strange. "Hey, is this elongated bamboo?" Usopp asked. Looking upwards, there were 2 sticks of bamboo that were abnormally tall, to the point where they couldn't see the top. This seemed kind of familiar to Luffy, but he couldn't place where he'd seen it before. Suddenly, the bamboo moved, shocking Usopp and hitting him in the face. Ah! The elongated bamboo attacked Usopp. Chopper panicked. "Bamboo bastard! I won't lose that easily," the sniper shouted, pulling out his slingshot and letting a lead star fly, breaking through the bamboo. "Ha! Take that bamboo!" Usopp shouted, throwing his fist in the air. "That was amazing, Usopp," Chopper shouted happily. "Was it really?" Luffy asked skeptically. The two were broken out of their celebrations when they heard a panicked yell coming from above them. Luffy looked up to see an old man falling towards him. "Oh, I remember now. Who are these guys?" Nami asked. The Going Merry was currently surrounded by 2 anchors, each of which had attached themselves to the island, and were connected to a rather large enemy ship. "Doesn't matter who they are," Zoro said. "They cornered our ship, so they're clearly hostile." "Doesn't matter who we are," shouted a voice from atop the ship that had cornered them. "Watch your tongue. Roronoa Zoro. We are the Foxy Pirates, and we have claimed your ship as property of me, Foxy the Silver Fox."
"Whatever," Zoro said in a bored tone as he unsheathed a sword before swinging it downwards. The enemy ship, which easily towered over the Going Merry, was cut down the middle from bow to stern. As all hell broke loose on the ship of the now panicking Foxy Pirates, Zoro casually cut the chains that were rendering the Going Merry immobile from afar.
"Well, that was a waste of time. Nami, how's the log?" Zoro asked. "Actually, it's ready. It seems the time it takes for the log to set is really short on this island." "Well, that simplifies things. Now we just have to wait for Luffy to get back." The old man who had landed on top of Luffy looked horrified. "Oh dear," he exclaimed. "I seem to have landed on someone. Are you okay, lad?" "I'm fine," Luffy replied, getting up and dusting himself off. "Because I'm rubber. But anyway, you're that guy, aren't you?" "That guy?" the old man asked curiously. "Yeah, that Jack guy," Luffy said.
"My name is Tanjit." "No way. I'm sure you're that Jack guy who climbed the giant bamboo stalk to find the goose that lays the golden eggs so that you could have supper. But you're an old man now. Did it take you that long to climb it?" Luffy rambled.
"Beanstalk, Luffy. That was a beanstalk," Usopp corrected. "There's no way this guy is him." "Ah, really? So it wasn't him after all?" "I'm afraid not. You see, I am one of the nomads who travels from one portion of his island to the next. This island is actually a ring of wide open plains, which are all connected and have the same magnetic field. But I've been separated from the rest of the nomads, you see. 10 years ago, I made really tall stilts out of bamboo so I could see the view from the top. But then I got too scared to come back down, and got stuck up there. I've had to survive by eating the fruits off of the tallest trees ever since." "You're really stupid, old man," Luffy commented bluntly.
"Perhaps, but worry not, youngster. For now that you've forced me back to ground level, I can go and catch up with the rest of the group."
"I wasn't worried," Luffy said, before turning to Usopp. "Hey, we should probably get back to the ship. I can sense some unfamiliar auras at the coast." "Unfamiliar auras? Are they hostile?" Chopper asked. "Hard to tell. I think they are, but they feel more incompetent than anything," Luffy replied. When they arrived back at the ship, they were greeted by the sight of a giant pirate ship that was cut in half down the middle, lying in a heap in the shallow water near the coast. When Usopp asked what happened, Zoro simply replied, "It was in the way, so I cut it." The simple explanation was accepted easily enough and the Straw Hats got ready to set sail, but before they could, the sound of a gunshot interrupted them. "Straw Hat Luffy," came the voice of Foxy the Silver Fox, soaking wet and panting heavily. Beside him was a large fish man who had seemingly saved him from the water, along with a blue-haired woman and an ape-like man. "You dare sink my ship? You'll pay for this, you lowlife." "I didn't do anything," Luffy said in annoyance. "Go away." "Don't try to deny it. Your crewmate Roronoa cut our ship in half," Foxy shouted. "And you still didn't get the message?" Luffy couldn't help but ask. "Anyway, I'm not him, so leave me alone." "Absolutely not. There's no way I'm letting you go after what you've done to us. I hereby challenge you to a Davy back fight." "Okay." Luffy agreed easily, before unleashing a blast of Conqueror's Haki on the unsuspecting Foxy Pirates, all of whom keeled over and lost consciousness. "We win," the Straw Hat captain declared, before turning back towards his crew and ordering them to set sail. As the Straw Hats rose anchor, Luffy was in deep thought. Aokiji didn't show up this time. Last time he said he originally came to confirm that Robin was in the crew, but if I remember right, that cage lady already saw her setting sail with us in Alabasta. Is that why he's not here? While he wouldn't rule out the possibility, something about that didn't feel right. He looked to his right and locked eyes with Zoro. The swordsman nodded. It seemed they were in agreement. There was a storm coming. Fire. There was fire everywhere. It was all burning. The heat seemed to seep through her pores, under her skin, into her very being. She stared, wide-eyed and trembling, at the omnipresent flames as they consumed everything and everyone in sight. As they consumed Ohara, the sights and sounds drove her to the brink of insanity. The blasting of cannons, the whistling of deadly artillery, the agonized screams, the raging of the insatiable inferno, the rising of the suffocating smoke. For what seemed like hours, it was all Robin knew. "Run, Robin!" The familiar voice broke her out of her horrified trance even as she felt a bone-numbing chill spread throughout her body, overpowering even the heat of the all-encompassing fire. She tried to move as the gigantic form of Jaguar D. Sol struggled to his feet. Perhaps to do as she was told. Perhaps not to. It didn't matter, she just needed to move.
But she couldn't. Try as she might, she couldn't even budge an inch. What was wrong with her? Had her legs been frozen along with Sol's? She closed her eyes and gritted her teeth as she willed her body to do as it was told. Move.
"Run, Robin!" The voice came again, but it was different this time. She opened her eyes in shock. Sol was gone. In his place stood the ever-determined Monkey D.
Luffy, frozen from the waist down. His fists tightened as Marine Admiral Aokiji walked leisurely toward him. His arm blackened to obsidian as he threw his fist forward, faster than her eyes could keep track of, but evidently not fast enough for his adversary, who caught his fist in an icy grip. Luffy grunted in pain as the rest of his body began to freeze over. He turned towards her as the ice began to cover his face, the cold seeping into every last vein. "You have to run."
She stared in pure, unadulterated terror as the ice enclosed around the remainder of his face, which was still turned towards her. Unmercifully, Aokiji raised a fist, ready to strike. No, the fist collided with the frozen statue, and the brittle structure broke apart on contact. Whatever force had been keeping her from moving seemed to shatter along with that which had kept her going all this time. The spell broken, she sank to her knees in despair. No, the Marine Admiral turned toward her, his face impassive as he began walking in her direction. She didn't run like he told her. She couldn't, not anymore. There was nothing to run to. 3 weeks, the man spoke emotionlessly. "You're not breaking any personal records, Nico Robin," he said as he reached toward her. No, Robin woke up screaming. "Robin!" There was a voice shouting her name. Hands on her shoulders, shaking her. "Robin!" The voice came again. It definitely sounded familiar. She reached up to the hand on her shoulder. The contact seemed to anchor her back to reality, and her eyes focused before meeting the concerned face of her bunkmate. "Nami?" she asked. The navigator sighed in relief.
"Holy shit, don't scare me like that," she said. "Robin, are you okay?" Robin managed to give a weak nod, but taking into account how shaky it was, she guessed that it wasn't very reassuring. She could hear the loud beating of footsteps from outside the room just before the door was roughly opened, and the crew's chef, sniper, and doctor fell over each other in a rush to attempt to get inside the room. "Robin!" Chopper shouted in worry. "What happened?" Sanji asked desperately, searching the room for anything out of the ordinary, but finding nothing.
"Are you guys alright?" Usopp asked. Nami sighed. "We're fine now," she said, resisting the slightly irrational urge to scold them for not knocking. Once they untangled themselves from the floor, Luffy and Zoro walked in after them, less frantic but with unmistakable expressions of worry etched on their countenance. Luffy walked up to Robin, having recognized the scream as hers. "Robin?" he asked gently, not bothering to vocalize the obvious question. Robin swallowed. "It's nothing. I'm sorry for waking you all," she said. She watched as Luffy's expression softened from confusion to acceptance. "I'm guessing it would be pointless for you to try and go back to sleep?" he asked with an understanding smile. Robin could only nod again. "Well, it's a pretty nice night out," the captain said. "Anyone up for some stargazing?" Robin began to protest. "It's alright, you don't have to." "To be honest, Robin," Luffy interrupted, "I don't think any of us are going back to sleep either. Maybe some coffee will do you some good, Sanji?" The chef didn't miss a beat. "Coming right up, coffee under the starlight. Seems kind of romantic. I'll even throw in some early morning breakfast." "Sounds great. I was dreaming about food anyway," Usopp claimed. It always became hard to distinguish whether he was lying or not during times when it actually mattered. "I'm not sleepy at all," Chopper boasted. Robin couldn't help but smile a little as the memory of the nightmare moved to the back of her mind, not forgotten, but dulled. "Thank you, everyone. That sounds nice." As the male crew members filed out of the room, Nami hesitated before pulling Robin into a hug. "Remember, you can talk to me about anything, okay?" she whispered. Robin returned the hug and hummed in confirmation, and Nami let go. As it turned out, stargazing wasn't too bad of an idea, as there was a meteor shower that morning. As the crew sat and ate under the shooting stars, Usopp instructed everyone to make a wish, before explaining the premise behind the custom to a curious Chopper. Robin was silent as she gazed up at the sky, feeling as though the wish she wanted to make might just be unrealistic. The rest of the morning passed uneventfully. That is, until the crew spotted a giant frog doing the front crawl, and opted to follow it out of sheer fascination. Said frog then proceeded to jump in front of a moving train that was seemingly running on the ocean. Needless to say, that didn't work out very well for the frog, who was sent flying despite taking a ready stance in an effort to oppose the train's momentum. "That's one gutsy frog," Sanji commented. "That's Yokozuna," said a young girl from what looked to be, strangely enough, a train station on the ocean. "He does that all the time." "Hey, are you guys pirates?" "Yes, we are. I'm Luffy. I'm going to be the Pirate King," Luffy said, providing his signature introduction. "Really?" the girl asked in childlike innocence. "Yep," Luffy answered. "Cool. Hey grandma, pirates are here," she yelled. "Really?" came a voice from inside the building. "Hang on, I'll get the transponder snail." A few of the Straw Hats tensed as an old woman came out and started dialing a number. "Hello?" the woman greeted. "Who is calling?" "Huh? What do you mean, what's my emergency?" "Sorry, I think you have the wrong number." She then proceeded to hang up. Said crew members now felt ridiculous. What the hell was that? "So, you guys are pirates, huh?" the woman asked. Attention now focused on the Straw Hats. "Nice to meet you. I'm Kokura. This is my granddaughter, Chimney. And that's Gonbi, our cat," Chimney added, pointing down at a small animal that was quite clearly and unmistakably a rabbit. "Meow. Make that a confused rabbit." Nami proceeded to ask about the train they had seen, and Chimney explained that there were actually tracks in the water, which were built to carry the sea train, called the Puffing Tom, from island to island. She then revealed that the frog they encountered, Yokozuna, was always challenging the sea train to contests of strength, which he always lost. "Kokura-san?" Nami asked. "We actually came here following a log pose. It's pointing west. Do you know what island we're headed to, by any chance?" "If it's pointing west, that would be Water 7, Kokura answered. "The city of Water is home to the best ship mechanics in the world. Even the world government relies on their shipmaking." "That sounds like a good place to spend the money we've earned," Nami stated. Immediately the mood shifted as the crew once again remembered that they would have to owe soon. "Alright, it's decided," Luffy said. "At Water 7, we'll find a shipwright to join our crew." "A shipwright?" Nami asked, eliciting a nod from Luffy. "We have to make sure this doesn't happen again, so in addition to a new ship, we'll also get a crewmate that can repair it." "In that case, take this," Kokura said, holding out a piece of paper, which Nami took. "It's a map of the island, and a letter of recommendation. Give it to a man named Iceberg, and he'll get you what you need." As they got ready to set sail again, Kokura shouted after them. "One last thing. It takes a week for the log to set in Water 7. That will give you plenty of time to get your business done. We'll be returning to the city soon, so I hope to see you there." As they all waved their goodbyes, the Going Merry set out towards Water 7. "Man, I'm bored again," Luffy sighed. They had been sailing for several hours now to get to Water 7, and most of the crew was now attending to their own business. "When are you ever not bored?" Nami asked rhetorically. "When I'm kicking ass and taking food," Luffy answered anyway. "You mean taking names," Usopp corrected. Luffy looked at him quizzically. "Why would I want names? I'd rather have food." "Well, that's beside the point. The expression is, kicking ass and taking names," Usopp insisted. "I prefer kicking ass and taking dames, myself," Sanji interjected as he walked by. "Not you too, Sanji," Nami sighed as she checked their course again. They would be arriving soon, and then she could find a place to exchange all of the gold they had. They had a lot of errands to run in Water 7, but at least they weren't broke anymore. "Hey Nami, I'm still bored," Luffy said. "Well, find a way to entertain yourself then." "Are you sure? The only thing I can think of is watching Zoro train you guys again," he said. Nami had to suppress a shiver. The latest training session had been brutal, to the point of utter exhaustion. She and Usopp had nearly fainted, and Chopper had been pushed to the limits of his zone-enhanced stamina. Sanji and Robin were the only ones who didn't seem to mind, but even Sanji had been breathing heavily afterwards, and Robin had seemed to lose the subtle grace with which she always moved for a while until she had recovered from the strenuous activity. And all the while, Zoro had been laughing at them. The infuriating part was, when she had sarcastically invited him to join them, he had actually accepted the invitation and put them all to shame while continuing to laugh, as if the training was old news to him. She never knew the normally lethargic swordsman could be so sadistic. When she had mustered up the energy to yell at him about it afterward, he had actually had the nerve to say it was captain's orders, which it was, but still. It seemed that Luffy was really determined to make use of their time at sea. Of course, this had been the case since they'd entered the Grand Line, but he had never pushed them this far before, which caused Nami to wonder what had changed overnight. Searching for a way out, she quickly redirected his interest. "Hey, speaking of training, isn't Zoro lifting weights? Why don't you join him?" "I don't lift, but maybe he wants to spar," Luffy speculated, before jumping off of the railing and going to seek out the swordsman. An hour later, the crew spotted Water 7 in the distance. Upon arriving, they were immediately enraptured by the scenery. It seemed that their journey wasn't going to get any duller after Sky Island. The island took Water Metropolis to a new extreme. Whoever said Atlantis sank into the sea was clearly lying, Sanji commented, a hint of awe in his voice. That's a huge fountain, Chopper exclaimed in wonder. Blue Station, Nami read off of a sign as they drew closer. I wonder where we should dock. Hey, you, a man in a small fishing boat called. Pirates can't come in through the front, go dock in the back. The Straw Hats stared blankly for a moment.
Okay, Luffy shouted jovially. Thanks, mister. The crew continued to take in the scenery as they brought the ship around.
That's so cool, Chopper marveled. The city is floating on the water. I don't think that's the case. The island has simply sunk into the sea. The city seems to be built on top of the previous buildings, Robin observed. Hey, you pirates. You can't dock here, a random citizen shouted. What are you here for, plundering? No, we just need supplies, Luffy shouted back, not missing a beat. In that case, head down that way until you see a peninsula, the man shouted, pointing. You can drop anchor there. Got it, thanks, Luffy shouted again. Most of the crew was slightly bemused as they continued. You know, as far as people who know where criminals go, I think this is the best welcome we've gotten since Whiskey Peak, Usopp pointed out, eliciting laughs from the others. Where was that? Chopper asked curiously. It was our first stop in the Grand Line, Nami answered. Whiskey Peak? Luffy asked, his face turning red as he thought back. Zoro sighed. Sake Summit, he compromised. Oh, yeah, that place was fun, the captain said gleefully. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Robin said in amusement. Most of the other pirates didn't. Still, it does seem strange that they're so casual around us, Nami pointed out as they docked near the peninsula. It suggests that they're used to pirates showing up. They don't seem to be afraid either. It's most likely because pirates come here often for repairs, Robin speculated. As for the lack of fear, it makes me think that they have strong local law enforcement. As they dropped anchor, they started to divide up the tasks while they were here. Zoro offered to guard the ship, before leaning against the railing of the Mary and promptly falling asleep. Lazy ass, Nami muttered. Okay, Luffy and Usopp, the three of us can form a group to inquire about the ship. We also need to find a place to exchange our gold. Sanji-kun and Chopper, can you two stock up on supplies? Of course, Nami-san, Sanji saluted, before jumping off the ship and onto land, Chopper following behind him. Hey Robin, can you come with us? Luffy asked. I wanted to talk to you about something. Certainly, I was eager to explore the city anyway, she replied. Wait, how are we going to carry around this much gold without drawing too much attention? Usopp asked suddenly. Nami hummed. Luffy could lift it, but you're right. It would be better to leave it here for now. Maybe we could get someone to come directly here and make an estimate. With Zoro guarding, we don't have to worry about anything being stolen. Their course of action decided, the group of four entered town. After renting 2 Yagura bulls to make their way around, they were able to find the bank fairly quickly, seeing as the horse-like sea creatures knew their way around quite well. Luckily, the bank was able to fulfill their somewhat strange request, and sent an accountant to take a look at what they had so that they could give an estimate. Deciding not to waste time, they agreed that Nami would stay at the bank and handle the transaction while the rest of them went to the shipyard. Meanwhile, with Zoro, the Frankie family were quiet as night as they snuck up on an unsuspecting Zoro. Walking across the deck of the Mary silently, they gripped their swords. Don't even think about it, unless you want to get cut up, the swordsman said, eyes still closed and leaning against the rail. The Frankie family stiffened, getting ready for a fight, until Zoro let out a snore. Stupid love cook. Call me Mosshead one more time, I dare you. Zanbai smirked. His bounty may be high, but he wasn't too bright. He raised his sword and brought it down, only for it to be blocked. Alright, you asked for it. Great whirlwind. The Frankie family let out a collective scream of pain as they were launched off of the ship by a whirlwind of blades. Zoro sheathed his swords and collapsed back onto the deck of the ship, still asleep. That'll teach you. Dartboard-san, what did you want to talk to me about? Robin asked. Well, do you remember the revolutionaries that we ran into on Jaya? Luffy asked. Robin nodded. Well, they're on the island. Really, do you know what they want? Robin asked. Most likely nothing from you. They seem to have taken an interest in me after Alabasta, Luffy replied. I just thought you should know. That and I wanted to keep an eye on you. I see. Thanks for telling me, Robin said. This place sure is lively, Usopp commented as they made their way towards Dock 1, deciding that the current conversation wasn't really for him. It's not surprising, since the shipwrights here are legendary, Robin answered. I wonder if we have to make an appointment? Hello? Anyone there? Luffy shouted from behind the railing. His shouts attracted the attention of one of the dock workers, who Luffy quickly recognized. His features were quite unique, so it was hard not to remember his face. Especially since he was a CP9 agent. Hey, are you square, Usopp? He asked. Who's that? The man asked quizzically. Well, whatever. What do you need? We have a recommendation letter from Kokura at the shift station, Robin replied, pulling out the letter that Nami had given her. Would it be possible for us to meet with a man named Iceberg? Luffy observed the interaction carefully. To Squareno's credit, his eyes didn't even linger on Robin before he looked down at the letter. Seeing as Robin hadn't reacted in the slightest, it was safe to say that she didn't know who he was. That worked out just as well. As much as he wanted to just go ahead and kick CP9's collective asses right here and now, he wouldn't be able to explain that away. He had no proof of their affiliation with the world government, and they wouldn't be able to get a new ship if he did that. So he would have to bear with the fact that they were here for now. Well, Iceberg is a busy man, but he also has a tendency to spontaneously cancel all his appointments, the undercover agent said. It depends on his mood, to be honest. Is he that busy? Usopp asked. Who is this Iceberg guy anyway? Oh, you didn't know? Iceberg is the mayor of Water 7, as well as the president of Galila Company, and the manager of the sea train, the man replied. My name is Kaku, by the way. I'm one of the shipwrights of Galila Company's Dock 1. Damn, he's a really important guy then, Usopp said, amazed. Definitely. He's known to everyone in Water 7. Why did you need to meet with him? If you just need your ship repaired, I can handle it for you. Actually, we need a new ship, Luffy said, his voice dropping as a hint of shame spread across his face. Our old one is damaged beyond repair. Oh, that's too bad. Is the keel damaged? Kaku asked. The keel? Usopp repeated. He too was rather subdued. It's the piece of wood that holds the ship together. If you don't know what that is, how do you know it's damaged beyond repair? Usopp's sweat dropped. It kind of told us. Kaku stared blankly. It told you? He repeated dumbly. It appeared to us in the form of a small child and told us it wouldn't make it much farther, Luffy said bluntly, although with a hint of depression still in his voice. Well then, Kaku said. I've heard of legends like that, but I've never actually met anyone who claimed it happened to them. Nevertheless, I should probably check for myself, unless you're set on a new ship. No, it's fine. You can check, Luffy replied, causing Usopp to feel an irrational hope despite already having been resigned to the fact that the Going Merry couldn't sail anymore. Kaku then proceeded to jump off of the shipyard building, surprising Usopp and Robin. When Usopp questioned his well-being, a voice from behind them spoke up. He'll be fine. He does that frequently. The three of them turned to see a blue-haired man with a small white mouse in his shirt pocket. As the man approached them, his gaze lingered on Robin, and his eyes narrowed. This put the raven-haired woman on guard instantly, but he averted his gaze and continued speaking. People call him the Mountain Wind. Everyone around here has their talents. He's the chief mechanic of Dock 1, so I guess it's not surprising that he would stand out quite a bit. Even if I'm not sure how he does what he does. He turned to a woman following behind him, Khalifa. Straw Hat Luffy, Demon Wind Zoro, Nico Robin, and Black Leg Sanji, she stated, causing the man to narrow his eyes again and Usopp to sweat at the fact that they'd been identified that easily. A combined bounty of 404 million belly. Well, that's quite the sum, the man drawled. Oh, I seem to have forgotten to introduce myself. I'm Iceberg, the mayor of Water 7. Meanwhile, with Zoro, Kaku hopped onto the Going Merry and took a look around. It was a nice ship, but it wasn't likely to make it much farther through the Grand Line even if they could repair it. It simply wasn't sturdy enough. Suddenly, Kaku was forced to duck as the man who had been sleeping on deck reacted to his presence with hostility. Shoot first, ask questions later, huh? He mused as he hastily dodged another sword slash. Upon observing his assailant more closely, however, his eyes widened. Out of my way, you giraffe bastard, this guy, he's still asleep. Hey, wake up, he shouted, launching a kick at the swordsman, which was effortlessly blocked. Kaku managed to avoid injury using Tekai. Luckily no one was around but the two of them, so no one had witnessed it, and the blow seemed to have woken his opponent up. Zoro rubbed his eyes and yawned before taking a look at the who he had been attacking. Oh, damn. I reacted on instinct. Sorry about that, he said, even though he really wasn't. No problem, I guess, Kaku said with a shrug. After a short conversation in which Iceberg introduced his personal assistant, Khalifa, and cancelled all of his appointments in the process, Robin handed him the letter from Kokura, which he took a look at and then immediately ripped up. Hey, wait. What's the problem? Usopp panicked. One of your workers went to check out our ship, but if it turns out it really can't be repaired, we're going to need a new one to set sail. Okay. Iceberg responded easily. If it can be repaired, we'll repair it. If not, we'll sell you a new one. Why'd you rip up the letter then? The lipstick stain disgusted me. Kokura and I are old drinking buddies. Anyway, since I'm bored, I'll give you guys a tour of the shipyard. Just then, the three Straw Hats heard Nami calling out to them. Luffy, she shouted, running up to the group, we have a problem. What is it? The captain asked. Your estimate was wrong, he guessed. No, granted, they didn't tell me its real value at first, but I managed to weasel it out of them. But they can't pay us that much, they don't have enough to trade for all of it. Iceberg, who'd been listening in, raised an eyebrow. How much are we talking here, miss? 1,200,000,000 belly, Nami answered, causing the man's eyes to widen slightly. Wow, you were that accurate? Usopp said in amazement. Well, now that's quite the sum, Iceberg stated. No wonder our banks couldn't pay it. Still, Galila Company itself should be able to handle the transaction if it's really that much. Really? Nami asked, practically glowing. But the gold is on our ship. Do you need to send someone for another estimate? No need. Once we verify its value with the bank you went to, we can. He trailed off as a familiar-sounding argument reached his ears. Is that Lucci and Polly? He asked. Yes, it seems that Lucci had to help Polly escape from his debt collectors again, Khalifa confirmed, causing Iceberg to sigh. I'm not even sure why he bothers at this point. This Polly guy sounds like he wouldn't want to meet Nami, Usopp commented. Meanwhile, with Zoro, 300% interest. My ass, the swordsman mumbled before letting out a snore. The crew turned towards the two bickering workers who were making their way over, and Kurian's eyes landed on the one called Lucci. Her eyes widened, and she paled considerably. Her breathing became heavier, and her pulse quickened. When the two met eyes, Lucci's widened as well, before narrowing. Before Robin could say a thing, he gave her a small, subtle shake of the head, and any thoughts she had about confronting him instantly vanished from her mind. She never knew a simple shake of the head could be so threatening. Her eyes instinctively wandered to both Nami and Usopp, who were both completely oblivious to the peril of the situation, along with all of Dock 1. Apparently, she swallowed thickly before she felt a reassuring hand on her shoulder. She turned and locked eyes with Luffy. His eyes were significantly softer than Lucci's as he gave her the same gesture that the assassin had. The trained CP9 assassin. And he knew. Luffy knew exactly who this man was, she had no doubt. Things had just gotten rather complicated.